Good evening, everybody. Hello, welcome. Okay, so who's been here before on any question? Oh my God, okay. Oh, quite a lot of people have been here before. That's good, so you know how this works. But there are some rule changes this evening because I've decided I don't want to listen anymore to how you got started in the film business. So I've introduced, oh, by the way, I'm Oliver Stapleton, in case anybody doesn't know that. Thank you. So what I'm going to do this evening is, so you can't ask, there's certain questions, I'm going to get some votes. Like, are you allowed to ask, how do you get your first feature? Yes or no? For yes? Right, great, okay. So don't ask, how do you get your first feature? Are you allowed to ask, how do you get into the film business? No, okay, great. So this, what? What? Is it revolution already? Okay, so that's good. That's two things you can't ask. Right, now I want to move a little bit into what you can ask, but I'm not going to tell you that because you're just going to ask, right? Does that make sense? Absolutely. So what happens now is, if I've asked the members of the panel, who are, 2 days ago I had 2 people on this panel, and I was thinking, oh shit, there's only 2 of us, and now, what do we have, 10. So that's really nice, it's kind of too many, but I couldn't really tell anyone not to come. It would have felt really weird. No, you're staying. Yeah, so, what I've asked them to do is to introduce themselves, but no like backstory, but they have to give, within 2 minutes, a moment of like joy, humor, something good about the film business, right? And I've decided that John should start, because he's the dodgiest. And so if it ended with him, I know there'd be some kind of disaster. So we're going to start with John and move this way, skip me out, and go that way. And then may say something at the end, I don't know. Okay, John Matheson.
Okay, so this is how I started in the film business.
Right, that's it, cut.
So I was running in Soho, because I couldn't get on the camera crew because the unions were horrible unless you were someone's son or nephew and you read the Daily Mail, which none of you know what that is, which is fine. You weren't going to get in. So I was working a place that did rubber numbering. You don't know what that is either, anyway, it was disgusting. The guy I actually worked for got busted by the Vice Squad, but nothing to do with rubber. But anyway, I was taking a load of film, it was this time of year, on a barrow down to a which had been rubber numbered, and I'm on my way back. I had to pick up another set of film, and I was going down the bottom of Soho where there's a street called Arch Street. It's got a slight slope on it, and I was carrying too much of this stuff, and it had been snowing and there was grit and shit all over the road. It was really that horrible scungy stuff. And anyway, I dropped a can of film. And it fell down on the street, and then it rolled down. I thought, well, it'll be okay because it'll just sort of fall on its side. Then the can opened, the top and the bottom came off. And I thought, well, it'll be all right because it'll be wound the right way. But it was covered in tissue, which is a really bad sign because it was negative. And it just rolled down the street all the way down, maybe 50 meters, and I was screaming my head off. And where I worked, all the girls, because Soho was a bit more fruity at the time, there were quite a few brasses around. Brass, flute, prostitute, anyway, doesn't matter. Anyway, and they heard me screaming, they knew me, and they said, what are you doing? And so they all rushed out of their various boîtes de nuit and helped me pick up this film. And I said, you can't just touch it, we got to. And we took it up this staircase like this, and they got their hair dryers out, and they couldn't understand why I was so upset. I said, it was only orange. They didn't seem to, Anyway, that was my. Anyway, we wound it back on, and never said a fucking word. And I got out of the film business, got out of the editing business. And because the other thing with editing was, you know, you had to work on DPs and stuff, and you know, you're made to work, you're made to get up. Editing was terrible, and I remember we used to smoke a lot of marijuana. And I remember coming back on the tube station one day, and I lost this one trim, and I sat on the tube, and I sat like that, and there was this one piece of negative, you know. So that, you know, don't be editors. But you go to cutting rooms. Amy.
That inspired me to tell a story from my days as a very well-known practical joker, as a second assistant camera person. And I was on a commercial up at Lake Castaic in Los Angeles, and I thought I was such a badass. It was before helmet laws, so this is a long time ago, and I was a notorious practical joker. Cut to, they asked me to take the film home, 105 degrees in LA in the evening, and I said, oh no, I can't, you know, I'm on my motorcycle. And they said, well, you're the only one going in. So I said, okay, I'll do it. And I put the 4 cans of 16 millimeter film into my saddlebag with some rubber-soled sneakers to, you know, cushion the impact if there were any. And I rode home in 105 degree heat on my motorcycle. And then I got off at the Hollywood Bowl exit, and everybody was honking at me. And I was like, what? I'm not driving that bad. And I looked in my side view mirror, and there was a fireball higher than my helmetless head. And I pulled over, and a Good Samaritan jumped out of an RV and put out the flames. And then I tried to call the DP and tell him that I had burned the film and what should I do. But he wouldn't believe me because I was such a practical joker back in the day. So he's like, yeah, sure, you know, go to bed. But I was like, no, really. And he said, well, put it in a changing bag. And I had 4 hockey pucks with melted yellow core plastic in the middle. But I did take it to the lab. My eyebrows were burned off. The guys at CFI probably still remember that if they were still there. And the best part of the story is that then for a decade after that, you would hear this urban legend of the camera assistant who burned 4,000, 10,000 feet of film for a big, huge movie. It was a tiny commercial. I'm sure hearts were broken by that. But the funny thing is that stories get embellished, and that just sort of reinforced my rebellious attitude about you can't take anything too seriously. But it was, it set a precedent. Nobody, I had to go back to work the next day. I thought I could fire myself because, yeah. But it was terrible to go back and tell the director what I had done. But yeah, I am still fully accountable. And I still have that motorcycle.
Yes, I was tempted to tell a story about a mishap with film as well as a camera assistant, but I won't be as funny as these two, and maybe it gets a little old by the time we get to the end, so I try to do something that Oliver wanted, even though I'm German and disasters are easy for me. A good experience I had last year, I shot my first German movie in 35 years with a Turkish-German director from my hometown, Hamburg. We shot in my favorite landscape in northern Germany on the coast. It took 2 years to get the movie financed. It's the life story of a mentor and friend of ours who just passed away this weekend. He wrote the script and couldn't direct it anymore. So it was a fantastic experience. We prepped once everything was lined up for 4 months, I think. For a small film, that's a lot. It's a 12-year-old boy in the story, every day, every scene. We only had 4 hours per day with the kid in front of the camera, which we stretched a little bit once we hit Denmark and the island. But we shot a whole sequence of him trying to get food for his mother, get wheat bread and honey, and it was very complicated. It's the end of World War II and has a lot to do with animals as well. And at the end, there's a scene where he has to steal eggs from a goose. And it's a birding paradise. There's millions of birds migrating on this island. So we had this goose coming from Bavaria with a Bavarian coach, and she was the real animal coach, so that was good. We had other animal coaches that weren't good, that threw just things into the air and they crashed down and whatever. So here was the goose and the boy, and I was operating the whole movie, so there was the director next to me with a little monitor and me operating, and we shoot the POV and the reverse angle on the boy. First, it's a whole standoff. The goose does all sorts of things to scare him away and to fight him back. And the goose was pretty good, so we got that. And then there are the eggs. Now he's down there, and the goose is watching him taking these big eggs, and he takes all 5 of them. And I'm doing the shot of the eggs, and he grabs all of them. And then I say, "Is he really taking all of them?" And Fatih said, "You're right." And then we changed the scene, and he takes all of them, and the last egg he takes, and he looks at the goose looks at him, and then he puts one back. And so he leaves one there. And that was kind of how the whole movie went. We always tried to improve everything, we listened to each other, and I was allowed to say stuff about performance and story as well. Okay.
Wow. I don't know what to say. Okay, so I was born in September '57. Anyway, so no, well, is it a story about how we started or anything?
No.
No. Okay. Yeah, okay. So I never started, basically. So no. Oh, what can I say? So I was shooting this movie with the Coen's brother, and we were supposed to do 2 shots. It was a Western, and one on a guy waiting for a horse, back and forth. And then I suggest the Coen, so what if we do a whip pan and I go back? It could be funny. And Joel said, yeah, it's pretty funny. What do you think, Ethan? And Ethan said, yeah, okay. Mm-hmm. Well, you know, Bruno, usually 80% of what you say is shit. But this one is pretty good. Let's do it. That's it.
I work as a colorist, so I'm basically not on set most of the time. I don't have these adventures. I don't have Goose or, hardly anyone with me most of the time. So, but there are cute things that happen sometimes. So when I got my first commercial gig in Spain, I was grading all day, feedback up and down, They approved the grading, they disapproved the grading, they opened the edit, they closed the edit. And it got really, really late. And I was alone in a big agency, or I thought I was alone. And I was like, oh, I'm getting really bored, getting really sleepy, it's midnight. And I imagined the client, in a jacuzzi somewhere in the Caribbean saying, oh, this is too dark, I don't know if I want it brighter. It's normally like this. And, but there was someone else in the post house, there was a producer and an editor also waiting for approval. And so we just started playing music and chatting, to make time. And then we slowly started asking questions like, where are you from? What was your neighborhood? Where did you grow up? And we slowly started to figure out that the 3 of us were in the same school when we were kids. And then we kept talking, and we realized that our parents were working in the same office. And so we managed to exchange our numbers, and our parents met for a lunch like 20 years later, just because we were doing night shifts in a post house. Yeah.
Oh.
It's cute, it's real.
It's cute. I'm going to tell a story about when I was on a film called The Mountain Between Us, and we were shooting on the top of a mountain at 15,000 feet. So how many meters is that? I can't remember. 4.5. And it was 4,500 meters. And we had to get up there by helicopter every day, and we could only stay for a really short time because we could only fly in the day, and we were in these huge helicopters that took like 10 people, and they couldn't even land, and we had to jump out. We had to jump in and out every day. Like it would land close to the ground, and we would have to climb up and climb in and then climb out again. Troop carrier helicopters. Anyway, and we had to get a dawn shot, so I asked my second unit to go up there, and they would have to stay the night. And there was a shed, a little tin shed there that they would have to sleep in. So they took up their sleeping bags, and one of them put the camera in their sleeping bag, and the other one had the lenses in their sleeping bag because we were scared that they were going to freeze. It was Alexa 65s, very comfortable. And they couldn't sleep, and then one of them said, you know what, I bought some brandy. I've got brandy in my bag. And he went to take the brandy out, and it was frozen. And alcohol freezes at minus 40 degrees. And then he just started crying. And they stayed up all night. They got the shot, but they didn't have the brandy.
Okay, I was on a film called Beast, and we were in the Northern Cape in South Africa, in the middle of the savannah, desert, whatever, about 45 minutes away from base camp. It's dawn. We are waiting for the sun to come up and for Idris Elba to come to the set. And he's a bit late, which is very strange because he's usually absolutely on time. And this kind of eerie feeling of something is not natural. And then we get a call on the walkie-talkie saying, okay, you stay put, stay together, don't take cards, don't go anywhere, don't move, we have an incident. Okay. What is the incident? Silence. We lost the lion.
Well, that's a hard act to follow. So I'll go back to my youth in this business. So unlike a lot of people up here, I came up in New York, which we called the Wild East, because we were nothing like Hollywood. I came up in the electric department, although I did my share of mag loading along the way. And back in those days, we didn't use generators. We tied into the building's power to get the power, you know those days, right? So I was the best boy, girl, whatever that you want to call me, and it was my job to tie in. It was a McDonald's commercial. It was pretty big. So I go there, and I'd done it numbers of times. The gaffer trusted me. So there I am, and I'm tying in. All of a sudden, the lights go off. As you know, I'm on my last leg of the metal going into the lug. And it was like, oh my God, the lights go off. And then I look inside the McDonald's, no lights. I look outside, no lights. So, P.S., I heard there was an actual electrical issue 2 blocks away, and I had done nothing, but I was ready to go home and cry.
This is about when I started out, so I'll be brief. So I was a student, and we were at an art school, but we were making films, and we were very keen and eager. Quite a big feature film came to the same town. It was Ken Russell's Tommy. If you ever know, if you heard of The Who, you might know. So it was pretty big, and we blagged our way in and got some money from the producer, and we had our cameras so that we could edit, and we could do sound, and with 3 or 4 of us set off to make the making of. This was pretty much before making ofs were a thing. So we filming. On one particular day, it was very, very hot in Britain, which sometimes it is. It's on the coast, and there's a pier, and there's a big scene inside the pier. And I know the reason, but lights in those days were very hot electric lights, and they covered one wall in these lights, and it was very, very hot. The pier caught on fire, right, and burnt to the ground because it's an old Victorian pier. And of course, me and Ken Russell, they carried on. Everyone got out safely. There was nothing to fear there. We all got out. They carried on filming because that was part of the story. They put it into the film, the finished film, because the story does end in a disaster, and that was part of it. But we were shooting, and we were down to our last few rolls of film, and we thought, well, we've got the footage too. Surely the BBC will want to show this on the news. Yeah, okay. We had signed a little contract with the producer saying we wouldn't do this. But we wanted to get it processed, so we sent it to the BBC, and not thinking that they would actually do it. A motorcycle came, took it out to another place. And then, of course, strangely, everybody was in one big hotel, the only hotel, not a Victorian hotel, where Queen Victoria used to stay. It's really kind of back in the day, this. And the actors were there, and some of the crew, and I lived just because I lived in the town, so I was only a few streets away. So we're friendly with everyone. We go back to celebrate really this burning of the pier, and the producer comes in and says, "I hear you sent some footage to the BBC," and he said, "If that footage comes on TV, you'll never work in this industry again." So yeah, cut forward a little bit. 9 o'clock news come on, and the very last piece they put on the footage that we had shot. Harry Ben, the producer, came around the corner and went, "No, you'll never work in this industry again." But the good news was, Keith Moon and Oliver Reed and the actors and the crew were all in the bar, and they said, "Come on, don't listen to him, we're all going to have a drink." So ended the night drinking with Oliver Reed and Keith Moon. And you have to know that they both died of alcoholism, by the way. So.
Thank you. Okay, so one last story just before we move on to the title of what we're supposed to be doing, which is your questions. But I couldn't resist telling you one story. So you got to cast your mind back in 1989, 81. I'm just out of film school. All I do is shoot music videos, one after the other, music video. It's all on trust. There's no ATM. There's no, getting cash anywhere. There's nothing that you have now, right? So you get this phone call, "Can you go to Paris tomorrow morning? We'll meet you there." Sure. So I put the phone down next morning, get up 5 o'clock, go to Heathrow, buy a ticket, get on the plane, arrive in Charles de Gaulle, and there's this young French girl who says hello. I say, "Oh, bonjour," and then she puts me in the car, and I think, "Oh, I wonder what we're doing." So there's no, obviously, I really, all I know is the director. I just knew the director, that was it. So we're driving along and chatting, and I'm sort of quite happy, and then we come along traffic lights, and we stop, and there's a truck in front with a picture of a camera on the side, and I thought, oh, camera truck. So I said to the French girl, I said, is that camera truck, is that like our truck? She said, oui, yes, it's a truck. And I said, oh, hang on a minute. I said, I just want to ask them something. So we're stuck in a traffic jam, right? So I jump out the car and run up to the truck and bang on the side and say, hello, hello. And they open the door, yes, what? And I said, I'm the DP, Oliver. Have you got the 6-inch map box? Oh, I can't remember, something. And then he said, yes, yes, yes. And he closed the door and drove off. And I thought, okay, cool. And then I sort of pan right for the French girl in her car, not there. Right? Gone. And I'm like standing there. There's no French girl, no truck. And I don't know any phone numbers. I don't have a call sheet. I only know the name of the director. And I have £5 in my pocket, English pounds. Right, so, and I have no clue where I am in Paris, not even slightly. So now I sort of stand on the pavement for about 20 minutes thinking she'll realize I'm not in the car, maybe. Anyway, she doesn't come back. So then a strange thing happened, and this, to this day, I think that is weird, because I then started thinking, what do I know about this job? So the only thing I knew was the French girl said to me, because I said at some point in the conversation, where are we staying? And she said, oh yes, the famous cafe from the 1930s, you know, where all the artists met, it's near there. So that's all I knew. So then I go into some shops, and in my broken French, I'm asking, where is the cafe, you know, that all the artists met in the 1930s? And they're like, who is this guy? and then for some reason, I persuaded one shop to sell me a beret, a French beret, for £5 But because I couldn't use the bus, because they wouldn't take the money, I couldn't use the underground. And I thought, well, while I'm here, I might as well buy a beret. Which is sort of weird when I think about it now. But anyway, I put the beret on my head, and it took me 6 hours to walk to that cafe. So now it's about 7 o'clock at night, and I get to the cafe, and then I think, right, I need to do circles round the cafe and go into every bar and every hotel. And so for the next hour, every time I saw a hotel, I walked in, nobody there. And then about the 6th or 7th one, and it's like 10 o'clock, and I'm starving and pissed and hungry, and I walk in, and the whole crew is in the bar, right? So I'm like, oh, there they are. And so I went into the bar, not a head turned, nothing. They were just like, hi. And I'm like, hey. And they just kind of went, hi, want a drink? And then I said, did you guys like shoot today? And they went, yeah. And I said, but I'm the DP. And they went, uh-huh. And that was it, you know. So, and then the next day I actually shot something, I think, but I don't remember. I also can't remember what the job was, who the band was, or anything about it. But anyway, so there you go. Okay, so now, who is going to be the brave person to ask question number one? By the way, you can direct your question at one of us if you wish, but you can't do that twice. Does that make sense? So that, you know, ask different people questions, otherwise everyone will ask John Matheson questions or whatever. So, yeah, right. And someone will give you a microphone if you just wait 1 second.
So on the topic of psychology, or talking to your director, what's one way of communication or psychology of communication and how you get people to, how you win people to your idea, to your something you want to do, but you have to persuade the director or producer to your idea. Yeah, and on that note, maybe some ideas or any books you'd recommend on psychology.
Okay, so just so I can explain a little more about what the question he's asking, it's a very good question, is, you know, we all have ideas with directors, and then how do we get our ideas to the director? But also if the director says, fantastic, obviously that's great. If the director says, no way, then how do you deal with that? And also I think, wasn't it Fred Elms yesterday said a fantastic thing. He said, it's not what directors say, it's what they mean. And that lodged in my head from last night. I thought that was a brilliant sentence. So that's what you're looking for. But anyway, who'd like to answer that one? Any volunteers? Yeah.
I think that a lot of that work happens in pre-production when you're talking about how you're both going to shoot the film and what the visual language of the movie is. And that's your best chance to offer up ideas. But on set, I always say to directors, I'm going to have ideas, I'm going to suggest things to you, and I know sometimes you're going to say no, and that's fine. And they will, because in the end, it's the director's movie, and you're there to service the story for them with the cinematography and work with the rest of the crew. But if you can't convince them of something because they don't want to do, you know, this is a wide shot and you want to do it on a long lens, you just have to give in, basically. And the thing with producers, I was going to say, is that's very tricky because that also happens a lot in pre-production. And I'm going to give away a secret here, but I'm sure everyone else has done it. When I'm doing my camera gear list, I always add 20% of things I know I don't really need. So when you come to the end of the shoot and they bring you in the office and they always say, you've got to cut your budget, it's true. I go, oh, all right, that fourth zoom, I'm going to cut it. I'll be all right, don't worry about it. So that's my other trick answer.
Anybody else?
People might have other things to say about working with directors, but that's my philosophy.
I was just thinking, I like to either sit behind the camera myself, which on bigger productions in America is very difficult sometimes because you have too many cameras going. But at the end, we are trying to get the performance from the actors together, right? What we do just as much as the director. And I like to sit close to the director if I can. And in the age of DITs and Video Village and stuff, it sometimes gets very separated, and I see some people hide in DIT tents. I don't like to sit with the DIT. I think that helps if you are accessible. I even had a card made just for me, the script supervisor with 2 little monitors and the director, and then I can do the aperture, stop pulling, and we still sit together like we used to. And that makes such a difference, you know. If you hide somewhere and then hide behind all the technical stuff, it's much harder to come back and say, hey, do you want to do that again? And they're already in a different world, right? And it creates trust as well. I mean, you have to become sort of friends for a while. So, and if you have that trust, then suggestions are appreciated, I think.
And also, don't hide behind the oh, I can't light that excuse. I've heard people say that, where they, you know, director says, well, can we do this? And they go, oh, it's really hard to light. That's just not a good response, right? Response to a director is, on the whole, positive, is more helpful than no is just not really a good thing to say to a director. Even if you know that you're going to say no, put it another way and sort of lead them into the no. Okay, so yes?
Can I actually ask a question of you?
Oh, that's pretty dodgy, but yeah, okay. Yeah.
Okay. We do blocking. The director, the DP, and the first AD might be there. Maybe operators, but let's just say it's the 3 of us watching rehearsal. I'm standing where the camera should be, logically, the way we think the scene's been blocked. The director's on the other side of the room. What do you do to get the director over to your side and be political about it? By the way, I have a psychology degree, so it's...
I think you can answer that, Barry.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's physical and mental, I think, you know, like, I'm often asked, how do you know where to put the camera? And it's a huge question, really, isn't it? When you do show it finally to people, there'll be a point where everybody gets in the room and they've got to get out of the way. There's too many people now to actually block things. So, but wherever they can find a place means that they can actually see it, usually. So those are the way of finding it. And it's then, like you were saying, you've got to bring the director to the place that you really believe you should start the filming, and obviously be aware to keep changing. Don't be afraid to listen. Yeah, it is the director's film.
I completely agree with what's been said, but I would make a slight difference then. In my mind, you might have the best ideas that you want to put in the film. And my experience that even the best ideas or the worst ideas, if they're not already somewhere latent in the director's mind, they have no chance to finish in the cut. And talking about psychology, and I have great respect for this science, I don't think psychology has anything to do with our relation with the director. It's not that I never try to manipulate psychologically the opinion of the director. Whether my idea goes straight to his attention or not, but even if I do a dance on the set, or scream, or threaten, or manipulate, it's not going to work. So psychology, I leave it to psychologists, you know. But when actually we're making things where we don't have much time for psychology.
Good. So I just have, how many directors do we have in the room? Oh yeah, quite a few. Okay, so I have one tip sort of on that note. When you know, when they come in at 7:30, the actors, make sure that they sit where you want them to sit. Because one thing I noticed early on is that when actors come in, you know, and they start reading lines and they just happen to park themselves somewhere with a Starbucks and, you know, start reading, they often stay there. And it might not be where that is the best place to start the scene. So I always work with the director in pre-production, and I like to work with the beginning and end of the scene and say, so where should we put them when they come in? Because then when they sort of come in sleepy, at least you say, oh, well, why don't you sit over there, or why don't you go over there? And then you have half a chance, because if you try and change that an hour later, they're going to probably say, oh, my character feels really great in this dark hole in the back of the set with no window. You know, so just figure that out up front, and then you'll have a better day, you know, even if things in the middle change. Okay, so another question? Right, come on, guys. Yeah, okay. Thank you.
So thank you. First question's for Oliver. Whatever happened with the French girl? Did she ever come back? That was supposed to pick you up. Did you ever find out why she left you?
The French girl.
Yeah. And
yeah, we're married.
Oh, cool. Beautiful. Beautiful. That's beautiful. And the second question, actually, I was talking about to go with your stories of, you know, you'll never work in this industry again, that pressure, or, you know, moments where you messed up and you thought you'd never work again. Also the concept I've been listening to of being fired. And somebody told me that it can be a rite of passage in the industry, and, you know, it can happen and it will happen throughout your career, and how to handle that. So
the question is, what do you do when you've been fired, basically? So first question, I guess, is who's been fired on the panel? 1, 2. Wow, you're very good. You've been fired?
Not yet.
Not yet? 3, 4. Tomorrow, right? Mandy?
No.
Yeah, me too. I've been fired, yeah. Okay, so who wants to tell? What do you do when you get fired?
I can tell my story, what happened. I was on a TV pilot. The director was really green. I made my days. The producer didn't want to talk to me. I don't know why. It was a long time ago. Anyway, we get through. I'm doing my best. The crew was great. I get through the first week and they fire me. They said, you're taking too long. So they brought somebody else in. My crew stayed, and they said, I'm so glad you left. We have so much overtime. This person cannot make the days. You know, it was a difficult shoot. And thank you, I got so much money this week. So I was actually relieved, because this director was very passive-aggressive, pretending he knew what he was doing. And in fact, when we were doing the blocking and I was in what was the right place for the natural daylight, he was on the other side, it would have been all front lit. So that's why I wanted to ask the question. And you know what? I was fine. And a DP friend said, welcome, you're finally a DP that you got fired. Probably happens more in America than I'm thinking.
No, I'm still waiting.
Okay.
Okay, someone this side who got fired. John, you got fired? So, yeah.
Yeah, the BBC were changing from being in-house to freelance. And there was the friend of mine was trying to make this film. He's still working, great director, Mark Mundon. And he was trying to get this scene, this guy he was making the film about was about to go down as a documentary. He was going to go to prison. We didn't sure if he was going to get sentenced, if he was going to go down. They were going to take him straight down into the... So we had to shoot that weekend. So he said, and he knew knew as a cameraman, but he said, can you get everyone together? And said, yeah, so it was 3 phone calls, sound man, this, that, and the other. Something we're shooting. The BBC did not like that. I don't think they wanted to make the film. So we started shooting, and sure enough, he did go down. But then we had something to stick the film. There was no film without this scene, so we did it. But anyway, I shot it my own way. I do too many music videos like. And they thought they didn't like the Russians. They thought I was too weird. They fired me, and they fired everybody else. The film won awards, and then they tried to rehire me. And I just thought, you fucking, they smelt of mothballs, these people. I mean, they were just fucking dreadful. And, that's, anyway, but the films did get better at the BBC. Mark, and he's still, doing bits and pieces there. But it was pretty unpleasant. But the sweetener was when they try to get you back, and you think, no, I'd rather attach my nipples to the number 12 bus, be dragged around Marlton to bloody pulp than work for you bastards. And none of us went back. But anyway, we all had careers, the sound man and everybody else. So that was, it's not great being fired. But but it's good that you've stood up for something. It's good that someone doesn't like you. It's, it means you stood up for something. You've done something outrageous. Get fired. Be fucking weird, And we'll just mosey along and, not like Barry, no. But no, I think you've got to
he's right.
stick your neck out, because they weren't ready for us. They weren't ready for music video people. They weren't, and they are now, but they were very, very slow and very, so it's good to liven people up. Get fired.
Any more people want to talk about that? Or no, we don't. I could talk about it, but I'm not going to. Okay, so another question? Yes, just hang on a sec for a microphone.
Hello. So my question is related to color correction and grading. So you are always allowed to color grade, because many directors told me already, although I'm at the beginning of my career, and so they are, that it's the director's job or the colorist's job alone. And I'm very unhappy about it, because I would like to be involved in color grading, obviously. My question is related to this.
So the question really is, for you to answer, it's like, so you've got a director, you've got a DP, you've got a colorist. How do you deal with it if you're, say, the DP and you really want to be there, but the director doesn't want you there and you're stuck in the middle, right? How does that work?
I don't have a psychology degree, but I have a lot of experience in therapy between directors and DPs. So we're basically in the middle most of the time. And there are situations that flow great. And there are situations where the directors give space to the DPs. And there are situations where this doesn't happen. I think nowadays it's a bit different, because most of the times the DPs are shooting, or they either block the time to assist the grade. But in a situation where they don't agree, there's obviously friction, and at some point, one of them gives in, either because the director is convinced by the DP that their vision is better, or more suitable for the project. Or the DP says it's the director's film, I give in, and then we find an agreement. In my case, I try to show what I think suits better the project from what I see, and kind of also talk about the disadvantages of the other choice, but more on a practical level, so that no one leaves feeling like they didn't have a chance to see what their proposal was. Yeah.
So if you're a DP in the room who's been thrown out the grade, put your hand up. Wow, okay, 1, 2, at least 5, 6, 7, counting 8, 9, yeah, going up. Oh, you're nodding, yeah, quite a few. Okay, if you're a director in the room and you threw out the DP, identify yourself now. Maybe there is a director in the room who would care to speak up for their right to grade their film and chuck out the DP. Is there anybody who's prepared to do that? And no, okay. Yeah, understandable. All right. But it is, yeah, look, it's very tricky, isn't it? It can get, I loved it with with Stephen Frears and Lasse Hallström that I worked with for years, 8, 9, 10 films, well, more, both of them, but basically, when it got to the grade, I call them up and say, hey, we're going to grade next week. And they go, yeah, I'll see you. And then I'd say, don't you want to kind of come in? And they usually went, maybe. And then they'd show up at the end of the week. Then I'd say, look, I want you to come on day 1 and day 7 and day 14, kind of, if it was 2 weeks. Because I really, really wanted them. You sit there for hours and hours, just you and the grader as a DP, you can get lost. And the great thing about when the director comes in is they sit fresh eyes, and it's fantastic. It's just the best. And so I would actually hate to grade a film without the director ever showing up. And similarly, for me, if it's just the director, it's just it's just such a shame, because DPs, we work hard. And we want to be part of it. So ideally, you'll have a lovely life working with both the colorist and your director or DP, and you'll get on together, just as you should. So,
I think one thing I've learned is, when you're shooting digital, try and get it as close as you want it to be at the end during the shoot, because they also get used to what they see in dailies when they're editing, and sometimes if you're not entirely happy with it, that's what you get stuck with, because you'll say, but I wanted it to be blue, and it's now, which happened to me on a movie, and on a film that was shot on film, actually, that was meant to do a bleach bypass in the interpose, and then they all got used to the what they saw in editorial, and they didn't go through with it. So that's my advice, is get your LUT right, get your look right, as close as you can on set.
Can I add to that? I think it's really important. I mean, a lot of DPs don't seem to go to DI or the grading, and it's very much part of your job. You don't get paid, just go anyway, make yourself a pain in the ass. And I agree with Mandy, you've got to get it right at the front end. You've got to get them to like the images. You've got to get the editor to choose the shots that you thought were great. Okay, maybe it doesn't do anything. If you do it all flat and sort of, they go in there and they fiddle in the edit. They fiddle with horrible looks. I mean, really crappy things. So it's really important, as you, as something Italians would say, is author of the light, whatever the fuck that means. But anyway, but no, you are responsible for it. It's your eye they're paying for. Or they've selected you, paying you, whatever. But you must look after that thing. You've got to see it through. And it's very difficult now with the digital cameras, because back on the film ones, Oliver said, do you want to come out to West Drayton, some shitty place outside London, and sit with a guy that's in brown coats and that stink of vinegar and chemicals? Or do you want to go to a fancy place in Soho with a white sofa and espresso with a slice of lemon in? That's where they'll go, and then they'll sit there and they'll fiddle around the internet. They won't watch what they're fucking doing. So, you really got to get in there. I'd say get in there first, get it laid down, make it your fiefdom, you know, and tell them why things, and break them away from the edit, the familiarity. They might not even like the grade, but they get familiar with the edit. They get familiar with that. And when you come back in, it's sometime later, and you think, hang on a minute, let's freshen up here. It's wood from the trees. You've been here too long. You're looking at the same things. It's all familiar. Where's the color arc? What are we doing here? You know, why is it looking so bland? Oh, let's this windows on everything. I think you should work quite fast in I don't, Barry does, I'm sure, but you should work quite fast in the DI. You know, people go in there for weeks, and it all ends up looking like the same mush. You know, why do films all look the same? Make sure it's yours. Work quickly. It should be a piece of music. There should be glaring shots. There should be burnt ones and ones that are down and under. That's what gives the rhythm to the film. That's what makes you look different. But yeah, you've got to get in there. You mustn't let these fancy dits tell you what's going on. In the last film I did, we had a dit, and he said, I saw this guy at the end of the movie, he said, hi, yeah, hi. We know each other, yeah. I was your dit. You came to see me once. So get out in the front. You're on the bowsprit. You look with your eye. You don't scope and all this stuff, you know? So really, yeah, get in there. Make sure that you make that clear from the get-go what you're going to do and that you're going to be there. And don't let the editor say anything either. Anyway, thank you.
I just said if you can find a good colorist and you trust, and you can then you try to keep a bond with them as well, because if you can get them onto your film and you've already got the rapport, then that's worth a lot of time and effort.
Yeah, and get your colorist and the DIT to agree with each other. That's a good idea too. So, yes, there was a question there, please. Thank you.
Hi, I think Oliver, you were asking if there's a director in the room and their perspective on the color grade part. So I thought I'd just jump in quickly on that. For me, the director and the cinematographer is the real creative team on a film set. And as you say, in pre-production, your visual ideas for the film, you and the cinematographer, you should be bouncing ideas, obviously, and really aligned. And if you're creating a LUT, for example, you've kind of developed that together. So by the time you get to the color grading, I really you always want the opinion of your cinematographer. You know, you want their second opinion because you trust them as an expert. So for me, it's about, as you say, having alignment in pre-production, and you're all on board trying to serve that vision. So then when you're in post-production, it's a question of, oh, is this a little bit quite right? Or, you know, you're asking these questions because you want that expert opinion. I was going to ask one question. I had the pleasure of speaking very briefly to Barry after a Q&A a few days ago. And it was about actually the fact that I've started a new initiative called the Human Made Mark, which is about a trust mark that certifies the fact there are humans in front of the camera and humans behind the camera in a film or commercial against the tidal wave of generative AI. My question for the panel is, if you were starting now, would you be experimenting with generative AI, or do you think art should be an AI-free zone?
There's a panel straight after this one about all of that.
Yeah, there is a panel about AI straight after this, which Mandy's on. So I would recommend speaking about that in the next panel. But actually, I do have one thing to say about that, because we're not talking about AI. But the other side, what you said, is that, you know, obviously a lot of us have been asked this question about the dreaded two letters I'm not going to say. And so here's the thing, that what is our job? You know, what is a cinematographer? And the notion that a cinematographer is all about having a crocodile jump into a canoe going down a rapid, which I think was a recent image I saw generated, that isn't what we do. That's not our job, right? Our job is an intensely human job that involves people. That's why we love it. We love being with people on a film set, as you've alluded to. And so do not fear. We have a job. We will always have a job. People will always generate crocodiles jumping into canoes. And that's fine. Yeah, they can go do that. They're animators, right? That's called animation. Now, animation now looks a bit like photography, but it's not cinematography. And we need to really grasp that. Anyway, there was someone up right at the back. Thank you.
Hi, so on the subject of communication, I was just wondering if you guys can give us examples of when directors communicated really well with you guys and also really not well at all, like terrible communication. Because I'm asking in the context of being a director, but I think DPs, it would be nice for DPs to know also how to maybe guide directors to communicate effectively to them on the ideas. Yeah.
Okay, shall we start with a bad example or a good one? What do you think? Bad one, right? Yeah, so like maybe there's a time where you worked with a director and it wasn't so good. Did that ever happen? Okay, tell us.
How do I communicate? I don't know. Wow. I don't know. I explain what I'm doing a lot because now before with film it was a bit tricky because you say, oh, it's got to be night and there is 2,000 kilos of light. You're shooting at 11 and they say, you're sure it's night? Yeah, I'm sure. So it looks like day to me. Yeah, no, believe me, it's night. And you barely see anything. Okay. So now with digital, they see what you're doing. So, and I often said, what do you think? Is it okay? Do you like? And I remember with Alfonso Cuarón, he said, maybe it's a bit dark here. I said, no, it's not. So it's and so it's about sharing, you know. And that's what Philip said. If you go against the director, you're going to lose anyway. There is no way you can can convince the director that he's wrong, because even being wrong is a strange concept anyway. But I remember I was doing a movie, and it's a strange thing. It was about somebody who survived from Auschwitz. So there was a number here, tattooed, and there was a Russian soldier with a big hat like that, a big cap. So I said, we're going to do a close-up, and the close-up has to include the number and the hat as well. I said, it's not a close-up anymore. It's because it's nothing. We can't read none of them, and unless you go. So it was just like, and he kind of exploded, and he said, yeah, my mother went to Auschwitz. I said, okay, so there is no way I'm gonna convince him that it's wrong, because it's so they go into those kind of sometime obsession, which is totally relevant. And this case was a bit extreme, but it was just like, that's what he wants, period. And I don't fight, but I explain a lot what I'm trying to do. And if they don't like it, I say, why? And is there something you want me to change? So, and they say, yeah, maybe you can be more light here. Why? So it's just like I'm not sure I'm gonna do it. So, but it's but everything in this job, it's about this. Even grading. It's. I agree with you when you say the director. You ask the director his input, because when you grade, there is a moment where you lose yourself and you're fiddling, and sometimes you lose the content, and so having the I don't know if I'm answering the question anyway. It's just
yeah, you did.
But it's
I think the key is to understand that first of all, we all are totally different people, and DPs work in totally different ways. Some people think it's a purely technical job, and I was never great with that, and I still survived until now. And I'm sure we all approach things differently, and at the same time we have a lot of things in common. And directors are so different from each other. There are directors that can light just as well as I can do, and I can learn from them a lot. And once you understand that, then you let them say something about the lighting that you actually take to heart, maybe. And there's a writer who directs his first movie, and he's never done it, and hopefully is not too nervous and listens to you, you know. And again, I think it's more about trust. And I've had some bad experience where I almost got fired. I was just staying alive because it was a tax credit movie and I had the right passport, I think. But I really got angry one day in front of the whole crew. And that really taught me a lesson because it didn't help anything, you know. Had built up over weeks and weeks because he was constantly, it was shot on film, it was supposed to be really dark, and I always have a fill light somewhere. Because when I shoot film, and I do it on digital too, but this is how I learned it from some old British DPs that taught me a lot. And to have a little bit of fill light gives me the flexibility on shooting on film to pull something out of the shadows or just print it a little down, which was better anyway, and the blacks look better if you had a little bit too. So I had this bounce somewhere at night, and he hated that. It's also my eye light a lot of times. I get a little thing from that bounce. Then I don't have to worry about it in moonlight. And he would constantly say like, well, I just wish you would turn that off, you know? And the guy was a former first AD. He had no clue about photography. He would always wanted a viewfinder because he saw other directors do that, but he didn't know what he was looking at. And after like, I don't know, 5-6 weeks, I just had it, you know, shooting a lot of nights and action stuff. And I gave him my light meter. I said, why don't you do it? You know, and walked away. And then he called me in his office, you know, and I said, okay, that's it, I'm getting fired. And he was like, you cannot do this, and blah, 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 blah. And I had to apologize, which was really ugly for me. And that's the only movie that I didn't get to grade, you know. It had my contract. I did get paid for the whole grading for like, whatever, 2 weeks, my rate. And they sent me the grade, and thank God they had a very good color time, so it was all fine. But yes, so this is all.
Thank you.
One more thing. I think I was saying this last night too, is for me in pre-production, I try and get an idea of what the director wants really as early as I can, even if they're just if they're not technical or they're not experienced. It's about the story that they want to tell and how we're going to interpret it. And then, you know, as much as you can, I always like to do tests and show them and say, like, this is how I'm going to do this. This is what it's going to look like. Are you good with that? Does it feel right? And then the art department are there, and I always put in. I mean, you can't always do this if you don't have a huge budget, I understand, but as much as I can shoot a test that has a bit of the dressing in it or has something of the costume or the makeup that they want to do, and so the director sees it and is comfortable with it. So you're not doing it on the day, especially if it's something a little bit different, or you're doing an experiment, or you're trying something new, or something that they don't quite understand what it is. So it's about that sort of working out how that communication can be.
Yeah, I gotta put a sad note into it with the conclusion that I'm making is that in your career you will once or twice find yourself in a position where there's no communication possible with your director. It happened to me a couple of times where basically we were at a dead end and everything I tried, and maybe when actually it was he, maybe he tried also, but there was no way. And then the best thing that can happen, either you get fired or you fire yourself. I fired myself once. I was very happy with that. And another time I got fired because there was no way. I mean, there was no psychology that would work. There was no explanation. There was no test that would prove anything. But those things happen, and it happens like it happens in life. There are people, however good you may be or think you are, you will find this thing. And the best thing is to say, okay, well, we shouldn't be working together. Good luck, and I'm going somewhere else.
I think I'm kind of coming from the place where, as much as DPs want to know what directors want as early as possible, I think the directors really want the DP also to know as much as possible. And then, let's say as a director, I have in my toolkit like references, images, music, maybe to get the DPs in a mood. But I guess I'm always on search for different ways of like helping the DP get into, like, you know, this thing that has lived in my brain for like a long time kind of thing. And maybe Nadia could chime in on that too. I wonder if there are ways you prefer the director to communicate with you.
Yeah. I mean, it really depends on the type of project, the time you have to do the project, and the combination. It's like every project is a specific in the combination of the people, the time, the subject, the images you have. But overall, I would say try to get the team together before the grading days. Don't wait until the grading time, because it's really like whether people are in the grading room or it's remote, it's a bunch of people that don't know each other in a dark place. Like, how are they going to interact, you know? And some people haven't done grading before. Maybe it's their first film, it's a debut film, or some of them are very proficient in it. But you have like situations where a director comes and he says, I hate magenta. I don't want magenta in my film. You know, it's either magenta or green. I hate magenta. And you're like, okay, so I also don't know how to communicate with this person. If it's our first project together, we have to develop a language. So, and then he says, okay, I brought some examples of films I like. So you put them up in the cinema screen. And they're all pink, you know? They're beautiful, but they're all magenta. And then it's like, okay, you realize that they're all exactly what you're saying, you know, but you have to, of course, find a way of saying this. And then what you need to understand is like, why does he like these images, or why does she like these images? If maybe there's like an emotional connection to the narrative of the story, not to the color of the image itself, you know? And then in terms of agreements or disagreements with the cinematographer, I think it's just good to first meet casually, talk about what they want to explain or evoke. Luckily, if there's a proper pipeline, there's pre-production, as Mandy mentioned. But if you don't get that, then it's sometimes smarter to take a day of the grading budget and do it much earlier, meet and do a look development session. And maybe like you get to develop a look, but maybe what you just do is like get to know the people you're gonna work with. Otherwise, it's really abrupt for everyone. And we come at the end of the chain, and a lot of things happen on set that we have no idea about, nothing. And then there's personal life. You know, people come onto the grading, I don't know, during a divorce, or you know, their kid didn't want to go to school, or they just have a headache, or they had the best night of their lives the night before, whatever, you know. But you don't know, so you need to give space for this, and then it flows, basically.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah.
And one thing that came up last night, you know, this idea of inspiration and references, and I heard you talking about references. So one thing I would ask directors is don't just land a shitload of shot deck on your DP, you know, on day one. Just don't do it. You know, just talk about football or whatever you want to talk about, but get to know each other, you know, and don't be scared of not talking about the film. Many people in this room will tell you they got a job for talking an hour with a director on a movie about sailing or surfing, and then got the job, you know, and then didn't even talk about the movie. So it's like, it's Lennon McCartney, you know, the DP director. It's two of you creating stuff together. And so take your time. References, yeah. Okay, there was someone there, yeah, please. Yeah, up top there. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. We've talked quite a lot about the DP-director relationship, but I'm just wondering about your thoughts and preferences on working with camera operators, and whether you think having another step in that chain between you and the camera kind of gets in the way of your vision, or if you enjoy the kind of creative collaboration that brings.
Are you a camera operator?
Does it show?
Okay, great. Camera operators, yeah?
I think that was three years ago. I was here and I did a kind of Q&A, masterclass, whatever you call, with my friend Anastas Mikos. We dedicated an hour or two to the relation between DP and operators. And I don't think we ever came to a conclusion and the right answer to your thing. I would just summarize whatever our idea with Tas and I had. It's relation. in the full sense of the word. So relation means communication, means respect, both sides. I don't see my position as a DP as a dictator. I'm not always right. What I like is ideas to come and bounce back, and it's a very difficult relation. I mean, it's very difficult to find an operator with which you will be very at ease, very confident, secure. And it has the complexity of any kind of human relation. And I don't know how to go further in describing that.
So Barry, as someone who operates yourself, maybe you could talk about why, and on the occasion when you do use operators, which I'm sure you have to quite a bit with big films. Yeah, so maybe you could.
Yeah, so I have to, because most of my work is in America for some reason, I have to pick up crew much more from there. I will try and bring the guys, the regular people. If it's a choice, I'd probably go with my focus puller, to be honest. And then find operators there. And I'm going to say, I've only come across 99%, I've come across really, really good operators. And then my job, as I'm operating, and I have a style that they can watch, you can see it on other films, then just to draw everyone into that position. And I do something which is, the cameras say A, B, and C, but I tell everybody that we're just shooting A cameras. Every shot of every frame is as valuable as anyone else's, and therefore we just put all our effort into it. And I've been very lucky, on the last film with The House of Dynamite, Gregor Tavner and Catherine Castro both fitted in ideally, and then what we were talking about, the relationship between the cinematographer and the director, is to make sure that the director has that confidence as well, because with an operator, sometimes I've heard stories where the director will only talk to the operator and exclude the cinematographer. You're just lighting, but this is the story. I kind of have to cross over that thing anyway, and fortunately, if you have good, I've been very fortunate about directors, because I'm not much of a communicator, as you can tell, the really good rapport you will get with the director is when very little has to be said. That's my favorite place, and I can just get to the camera and relax.
Okay.
Well, in the U.S., again, in New York, I came up, once I started shooting, operating my own cameras. In Hollywood, the unions always wanted us to have operators, and especially on television streaming, there's always multi-camera, and there's a lot of pressure from showrunners and producers, writers, around the director who's supposed to be this hired gun, but we have a responsibility to our directors who are coming in, who may deviate from the style, and we have to be diplomatic with these directors, and yet support them. And if I'm on a camera, first of all, it's hard if it's 2 or 3 cameras to, I've had the other monitors there and I'm on the headset, too much headroom with blah, blah, blah. It's so much better for me to be near the director, hopefully away from the showrunners and everybody else. That's the one time I might bring them over to the DIT tent, keep them away from all the noise. And I am grateful that I have these terrific operators that have a wonderful skill and can, while I'm busy with the politics and the psychology, they're taking care of everything. It really is an individual situation, but television in particular, I miss operating, you know.
Yeah, I think another thing to say is don't be scared if you're the DP and you've got a B camera or a second unit of any kind. If you're the operator, you know, you're brought in for a couple of days and you're just going to do B or C camera, don't just wait for orders all the time. You know, don't sort of stand at attention and go, yes, boss, I'm going to put the camera over there on a 50. Be looking, look, because the best operators, they're going to come up to us and go, you know what, there's a fantastic angle, da-da-da, and you go, oh, wow, that's really great. So you're always looking for operators to add to the mix, you know, to the director's mix, your mix. So if you're, I mean, this happened to me actually on a job a couple of years ago where I had this great operator, then he got sick, and this other fella came in, and oh my God, the difference was unbelievable because the operator I had was so active, he was so involved, and then this fella came in and he was a bit miserable, and he was like, yeah, where'd you want the camera? And the whole energy, it was incredible, like for 2 or 3 days, the entire energy of the crew sort of sagged because of this one person was sort of monotonous, bored, not interested, not part of the team. And it's just amazing what a difference that makes, you know. Yeah. What?
I just want to add something about operators. I've a way of judging an operator, which is a bit tricky. For me, a good operator is somebody that after the take, he can tell me whether the actors are good or not. A good operator is somebody that is in the process of a filmmaking. It's just not pushing the wheels or the handlebar. It's somebody who is the first audience, the first spectator of what's happening in front of the camera. And any good operator should say, well, take 3 was better for the actors.
Yeah, there's many famous stories from Michael Caine, actually. He always had this amazing operator relationship, and he would say to the operator, if I give you the wink after a take, just say it was out of focus. and so if he did a bad take and he didn't want the director to say, right, we're moving on, he'd just give a little wink to the focus puller and the operator, and they'd say, ah, yeah, focus problem, and then you have to do another one. So, you know, you strike these relationships that are really important. So, okay, yes, in the middle there.
First of all, thank you for this opportunity to talk to you guys. Speaking of relationships on set, how do you, in different ways, interact or work with the actors on set without stepping on the director's toes? And if you're operating or sitting miles away in a video village, and you see like, oh, maybe it would be a bit nicer if this happens. So how do you think about those discussions? Because obviously it depends on who's directing and who's acting. And yeah, thank you.
Personally, I don't interfere in the relation between the actors and the director. For me, that's sacred. I don't get into it. But I have something that I think a DP must see, whether there is, very often actors are nervous about how they're going to look or how they're going to be perceived and how they're going to be there. The thing is, and that's almost during the prep time when you meet the actors, when you have to send a subtle message, which is basically, don't worry, I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to pay attention. And then throughout the shoot, you have to pay attention. Of course you have to pay attention, but it has to be visible that you're paying attention, that you're not reading the newspaper in the back of the stage. It's all about confidence. It's all about sending a message. I'm going to take care of you. I'm on your side. And once you do that, fantastic. After that, you don't have to get into anything else.
I was just going to add, I feel exactly the same. And also, I feel like when, in terms of your crew, I always say to my crew, when the actors come on the set, everybody's got to be quiet and they're the most important thing to the movie, really, because if the performance is not there, the film's not going to be great. And so to give them space and to be quiet and respectful and not go up and ask them, you know, what they do on the weekend or anything. But if something happens to that, I feel like, oh, it'd be great if they could just go a little bit that way. I will go to the director and say, is it okay if on the next take, if you want to say it, yes, or if you're okay with me just saying to the actor, would you mind just coming this way a little bit? But I I only say that if it's a problem for me. And a lot of the time they'll say, no, I don't want to do it, and you just have to deal with it. But that's how I approach that.
Any of you guys want to?
I think a lot of that process for me starts in the testing phase and working with the hair and makeup teams and the costuming teams, because we've got to put it all on camera before we're actually shooting the movie, and that's the place to instill the confidence that Philippe and Mandy are talking about, where the actors feel extraordinarily looked after. And when they see, you know, they're not always allowed to see everything, but when they see what you're doing with proper LUTs applied, and you've put a lot of elements that are going to be photographed in the movie, whether it's wood paneling and par cans with gels, or the proper pink sparkly dress, when everybody in the entire filmmaking team sees what the visual intention is, and then that's shared with the cast and the care that you've taken with their hair and makeup teams. I think that's the stepping off point for having sort of a silent communication with cast. And sometimes you can give them an idea of what a shot is, but a lot of times they've been around, they've been doing this for a long time, and they're gonna either observe if they need to know, or they'll ask you. I leave them alone. You know, that is a sacred space. And it's also the most important part of our job, is to create that sacred space for the director and the actors to do their work. And that, to me, is what motivates everything else that we do, whether it's in prep or during the shooting day.
Yeah, I think that's very important, that just your presence, really, sometimes when you have lots of cameras everywhere and the director's shouting with one of these across the whole set, and you go, well, this is a private conversation. And just being there and just, just saying, okay, I feel this, and then you can do a lot for them with sizes and stuff, or say, go now, go now, we're going in. I have had to, at times, when I had did a film with Hugh and this young girl, and I knew it was a father-daughter thing, and I knew she was going to go, and it was one of those breaks, and I didn't want to come back after lunch, and I just stood on the set. I just said, I'm not listening to them. Get 2 sliders and two hi-hats, 2 zooms, and I just stood in front of the cameras, so he couldn't see, and then they went, and they both cried. It was a big emotional scene. If we'd done on camera and 75mm and zoom lenses, you can't make a film on the zoom. Fuck off. They're about to go. This was and that was when I sort of step outside the box. I was with Philippe, you do not really go there. But I just, at that instance, I did that. And he was furious with me, but then, that's in the movie. They could. I don't like shooting 2 cameras, but they had to cross-cut it. So that situation, I had to step in, not do things in the purest way, on the prime lenses, zoom lenses, sliders, in case they blocked each other, in case they stood on each other. 2 operators are very lively, and if something wasn't working, they just dragged the whole apparatus across the ground. You hear scraping noise to keep the action going. If it doesn't go down in the box, it's no fucking good. So is, yeah, you standing around them and just being around them, I think, is reassuring, especially with the remote control and these things and operators everywhere. Just if they have someone who's senior and watching them, that I think helps. But you don't want to get involved in all the conversations. Let's go and smoke 50 cigarettes while they go through it all. So that you can't do anything about. There are times when it is appropriate to just have empathy with them. Their job's difficult. Yours is too at times. So just feel like you're in the same boat. But don't sleep with them. That's one thing.
Yeah, I've suggested that to directors sometimes. Yeah. One last thing to say about that is just, if you do find an actor, in the first 2-3 days of a shoot, you find actors like coming to you. What do you think? Just say, yeah, let's go talk with John about that. Guide them towards the director. Always. Do not reply your opinion, because you mustn't enter into that space, of the relationship. So it can happen sometimes with maybe a weak director. It's happened to me quite a few times. And you just have to keep guiding them towards the director, and that builds the director's confidence, the actor's confidence, and then they'll leave you alone, finally, to light and shoot the film, which is the aim. I did one time play tag team, actually, we had Sam Jackson, who's not easy, and he's scary. And the director and I were on our third film, and he's an Australian, so we knew each other well, and it was a great relationship. And so we did decide to tag team suggestions to Sam, because so if I wanted him to move left a bit or something, I'd look at Gregor and I'd say, do you want to tell him or shall I? And he'd say, your turn. And I go to Sam and I'd say, could you just sit just a little bit left? And then you got what we called the death stare. And that's when he just looked at you. He never said anything. He just gave you the death stare, and it was scary. It was actually really scary. But every time he did exactly what we asked. So we realized in the end, you just had to tolerate the death stare. And then it was cool, Okay, yes.
Well, my question is more regarding the prep production process. When you first get a script, how do you approach it? How do you dissect it? And what are the questions that you're moving on forward with and trying to get more information from the director? Do you have any approaches to reading a script? And how do you break it down in the matter of pre-production and then to set?
Okay, so it's how do you deal with the script? Okay, so who wants to answer? I might have put that on the no question list, but anyway, yeah. Okay.
I'm going into my fifth collaboration with a writer-director whose scripts are brilliant, but there's a lot of stuff that I'm an old school person. I like a pencil and a paper, and so we put the script scene by scene on cards, and you can see you can track all kinds of things, like when this hair change comes or how pregnant this girl is at that point. And just being able to see the whole script laid out, for me, is like a triple check that I'm following all these different things in the story that have a chronological or a script-based thing. And then you lay in where the music numbers go, and you have like a language and letter and word-based representation of the story. And then for me, just having that foundation really allows me to then find the places where I have to build in transitions or where there's a dream sequence or, and for me, I've been doing that since the beginning of time with Craig Brewer, and I can't not do it. And I have them all in my garage. Someday I'm gonna throw them away because they're giant and they're messy and they have Post-its all over them. But then it's also a visual representation of a lot of the discussions that are had, that several other department heads could come and say, hey, how pregnant is she supposed to be when we do this this car scene, or is his hair in this style or that style? So it's a really good collaborative and sharing tool for other people, because oftentimes Craig forgets about his own script and he'll come to me and say, wait, what season are we supposed to be in here? And I like having the visual version so I don't have to go into a computer to look at it.
Bruno, I am intrigued to hear how you deal with the script.
With the script? I don't read it. Yeah, so yes.
Don't want to spoil the ending, right?
Yeah. I don't like this page. Yeah, that's this one. Yeah. I'm gonna start the movie at page 45. Yeah. No, well, I don't know. So the question is about how I read a script. So the script, I read it, and first I have to like it. That's the basic. And if I like it, I said, oh, what can I do with it? But then I usually, if I agree to do it, yeah, I agree. So I call the director, and I want to hear what he has to say about it first. And because it's more important than my opinion in some ways, and in many ways, because I want to see if I can find my way into his brain. You see, so I talk a lot with the director.
Yeah, that was kind of more of my question. I probably didn't try to, and I didn't explain it well. It was, what are the follow-up questions, and how do you deal with it? So,
how do I deal with the script?
In pre-production, how do you sit with the director, go through it scene by scene? Do you do shot lists? Do you make notes?
Oh wow! Oh, it depends. I mean, it's okay. With Tim Burton, you worked with Tim, so you know that Tim Burton, you basically don't talk to him. I mean, it's just like you meet him for 10 minutes, and when he starts drawing, you lost him. So he's gone. So everything happened. I mean, my experience with him was
no, you're right.
Everything happened on set, basically. So and there is a territory with Tim Burton where you don't understand anyway. So no, it's seriously, it's a. I remember saying, being in his office, I said, "So Tim, what if we do something like that? You have to be very fast with him, because his focus is 10 minutes, as I said." So he said, "Okay, do you like this?" He said, "No." "Okay, so do you like this?" "Oh, let me think about it." And then he come back a week later, and he said, "Yeah, I like this, and look, that's what it's gonna be, and it has nothing to do with what you had in mind." But it was, you just gave him a little seed, and it became the Tim Burton flower, and so that's great. I didn't patent my idea, so it's okay with me. With the coins, it's more about who wrote this fucking script. It's just like it's really about what this scene is about, and then we discuss. The how to approach, in fact, a scene. So they storyboard a lot, and in fact, Ethan does his shot list, Joel does his shot list, and then they mix it together, and then we discuss again about it, and we storyboard for maybe a month, and it's just like 5 hours session every day for a month, where you go through the thing, and then you don't look the storyboard again ever. It's just to because a storyboard or is an approach, and there is one element missing, which is the actor, and the actor can suggest something which is not in the storyboard, basically, which could be a better idea anyway. So you drift, and but it's but to go back to the previous question as well about the relationship between the DP and the actor. So I think we all agree that we don't really step in, But there is a moment where, as a DP as well, you have to see you're fiddling or finessing a shot, and you can see that the actor is ready. He's ready to. He's in the momentum of acting, and that's when you have to give up. And it happens to me on Macbeth, where I could see Frances McDormand. She was really pacing up and down like that, and I went to Joel. I said, "Okay, so I'm gonna stop fiddling because she's really ready to go, and she's gonna kill me in a minute." You know, so, and the same with Denzel. You know, I remember what you just said. Yeah, I remember Denzel Washington asking me, "So what do you think, Bruno?" I said, "I don't think, sir. I'm a DP." You know, so it's just like and he laughed, and it was a way to. There is a director here. That's who you should talk to. It's not me. But even if they approach you, you have to answer at some point. And so anyway, but the way I prep is basically sharing a lot with the director more than imposing my own vision, which is stupid.
I could add one thing. Just on a different note, more technically speaking, for years I was traveling around with a big pilot case with folders and paper and paper and paper, and in complex movies where you have a lot of storyboards and a lot of stuff, it becomes heavy. And to carry that with you all the time, and especially in prep, we might not have an assistant. Nowadays I try and get a film student who finished film school to help me prep if I can. And I started to go digital, not because I love computers, but I have an iPad, and on films that need a lot of notes and things to remember and that shoot out of sequence and all this stuff, I use a software and break stuff down, have them organized in shooting order, and I can just click on my iPhone or on my iPad or back in the hotel on the computer and find what I'm shooting tomorrow and what I thought about 3 months ago and have forgotten, you know. I forget things too. Yeah. What scene you're shooting, you have to reread the script over and over again. I at least have to.
And I could just say one quick...
Are you using Scriptation? Evernote. But Scriptation is a wonderful app. Yeah, you can put photos in, everything, and the whole team can use it and share. So, but one other thing about script, on my weekends, I'll do the week's work in my head. I'll go over everything, but I flip through the whole script again from page 1 to the end to remind myself of the arcs of the characters. What? Yeah. Oh, yeah, and you know, make sure the director remembers, because it could be weeks ago. So it's really helpful, and that's what I do.
I was just going to say, one other kind of boring technical thing. What I do is I talk to the director like everybody else and get a sense of how they want to approach everything and the kind of journey of the characters. And I was working with a director who wasn't very experienced, and he said, "I just don't know how I want this to look." And I got him to write a little slug line for every scene about what was going on for the characters, and there was maybe one sentence, and sometimes it was 2 words, but it just explained to me what was going on emotionally with them. That gives me a trigger to start looking at different ways of expressing that in the photography. And the other thing that I do is I have like colour coding for things. So when I first read the script, I put everything that I think is a grip question, everything I think is a lighting question, everything I think is a camera question, and then sort of start from there. Philip's going, "I can't believe you're doing all this," but and because if it's written, then it gives me a cue.
No, I'm sorry, but you're shaming me because on the weekend I do my laundry.
No, I don't do that on the weekend.
You do that too?
In prep, I don't do it. I do my laundry on the weekend. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. No, but I used to do that a long time ago. There, I was taking the script. I was doing graphs about the ups and downs of mood and thing, and I was even drawing, painting, horrible things, and I became lazy because I'm not doing any of this anymore. I mean, I read the script. I think a good advice for a DP is a good DP, and I'm not that good, should seriously, should know the script better than the director. What is essential when you read the script as a DP is it's know the cracks, and when I say the cracks, when things are not working from a DOP's point of view, because sometimes the writers say, okay, well, that would be cool if this scene was night, because I've done 3 scenes a day, then let's put it night. And they don't realize that you put the actors in a situation where at night they would behave very differently. And when you get into period piece, then sometimes you read the script, even very good scripts, which on a visual point of view, they don't make any sense. You've got people going in the streets there's no candles, you're in the 16th century, and any historical book, you not only, for instance, in Paris in the 16th century, you were not allowed to walk in the streets at night unless you had 6 torchbearers with you. And anyway, you couldn't see anything, So if you want, as a DP, be true to the historical points, and you can choose not to be true, because that's another decision you make. Now, there's all kinds of things that you have to dig out of the script that you will not be caught with your pants on your down on the day on the set, because you won't be able to create a visual, an atmosphere that is logical and consistent with the story. So no, reading the script in detail and getting a DOP's point of view, at least for me, it's not so much thinking that I'm going to create a new Caravaggio or a Vermeer style, because I don't believe in those things. It's just to be consistent with the script, with the reality of the sets, so you don't disturb the brain of the spectator by doing things that don't make any sense. And that for me is the most important thing. And then, yes, if you want to have references and notes and things like, do it. It's always useful. I must admit, I'm getting old and lazy, and doing the laundry takes a lot of time sometimes.
I just feel like inadequate, because I read the script, obviously, and understand it, but I try and avoid doing it as much work as I can in prep. And, and I actually maybe collect a few photographs and put them on the wall, and then I'll have casual conversations with people, and I will rely a lot on a first AD. I mean, we don't mention that at all. I think the first AD is such a crucial part, and they should be your friend for sure. And yeah, I mean, I do I try to do some of these things, but I find it a storyboard is just a distraction, because it's drawn by somebody who hasn't got all the information, doesn't know what the location is. They may have come on a scout or a recce, and they're taking away the picture of it, and then they're putting 2 characters into it, and then I feel that no, until we're there and we know what the weather's like, and we know what the set looks like, and we've got our lighting is the plan, is for me to get the lighting right, and then light a whole space, go into it and be ready. Like you were saying, Bruno, if you're not ready for the actors, then you can get into a lot of trouble. I think that would be the thing. So work well with your whole team of people, and keep your gaffer close to you as well, as much as you can. In prep, as well as in shooting.
I just want to add something, and I totally agree with you with that. And coming back to what I said, whatever work you're going to do, reading the scripts and taking notes and things like that, my opinion, and when I did that in the old days, that all of this will be lost, forgotten, contradicted by the reality of the shoot. But if you don't do this job, you will not be able or less able to bounce back. Okay, well, I had this idea, but now I can have another idea. But if you come to the set with absolutely no idea of what you wanted to do, you're not going to get a good idea so easily. It's about the transformation between what you had in mind in your notes, in your references, which will not be happening on the set, that helps you to have new ideas and efficient ideas.
Okay, do we have to end at 7? Somebody tell me. Yes, you're nodding. What happens if we end at 7:15? Does the world end, or it doesn't? It's good? 10 minutes. Okay, we got 10 minutes. Okay.
Thank you, guys.
So I just wanted to add one thing before we have the last question, which is I suddenly realized while you guys were talking that when I was making films, I would do all the prep work with the script, and then I had this fat thing that I'd put on the camera truck, and I'd say to the loader, when you get new pages, put it in the script. And then I'd get 12 weeks later and realize I'd never looked at it. I mean, I simply never looked at that file one time because I was involved with making the film. But the second thing is, I had this rule that I didn't realize was a rule for about 5 years, that I never watched the film when I was making a film. And that was incredibly important to me. And I broke it one time. I was in Australia, I think, and Matrix came out, and me and Larry, we went, was my gaffer, we went to the movies. I hated it. I just thought it was the biggest piece of shit I ever saw. And we both hated it. And I went back, I said, why did we hate that movie? Everybody loves it. And it's because I was making another movie. So I wasn't in reception space. And when I saw it 5 years later, I was so puzzled. I thought, that's kind of brilliant, that movie, you know. So experiment, you know, experiment with yourself. Don't just do references all day long, every day. Do them one time and then let them go and find your movie, you know. But give yourself space to find the movie, because if you just keep input, it's not going to happen. So, yeah. So last question, right?
Do you have to be a dick to be a good leader?
Do you have to be a dick to be a good leader? Well, that's a Trump question.
Well, I've got a great answer to that. When I was first starting out in Australia, and the DP Russell Boyd, who I'm sure everybody's familiar with, is a fantastic DP and friend. And I said to him, do you have any advice for me? And he said, work really hard and don't be a dick. So there you go.
Yeah. And I'm going to be totally in agreement with you. I had the same question three years ago. And my answer say, no, you're not a dick. Don't be a dick on the set. Don't be a dick in your life. Don't be a dick ever.
Ever.
Okay, so I think we could summarize the last 2 hours quite nicely. Don't be a dick, right? Whether you're a man or a woman, you know, neither is permissive. Good. Okay. Well, I just want to say massive thank you to CAMERIMAGE for putting this together, letting us be here for the week. Thank you. And especially the volunteers, those of you who make it through the ceremony tomorrow afternoon. I'll be in an airplane, but do give them a massive cheer, because you'll see about 500 on the stage. No other country seems to be able to do this except Poland. They are amazing. And I also, you know, would love to give I think this is probably the most prestigious team I've ever seen on this stage. So, yeah, thank you so much for coming along. It's been great chatting to you. And we'll hopefully do it again next time. Great, thank you.